Sagittarius, miraculous. What's about to happen to you has never happened to anyone before. God is waiting for you. Have you ever felt that something strange is approaching? Not a small change, not an ordinary event, but a silent yet sacred transformation, as if an invisible door is opening between the world you live in and another deeper world, where the soul awakens. If you are a Sagittarius, or if you love someone who is, perhaps you've felt it before. A feeling you can't name, but as clear as breath itself. I once sat alone beneath a dim lamp on a quiet winter night and realized this truth. Death doesn't come with a knock at the door. It gives no warning. It slips in like a cold breeze through the cracks of the heart, not to take, but to remind. In astrology, death is not a full stop. It's a shedding. It's the moment the universe looks at you and says, it's time to become your truest self. And Sagittarius, if you are hearing this now, it is not a coincidence. This is a summoning. A calling from a world you've always belonged to, but one whose voice you've forgotten for too long. In the next 30 minutes, I will guide you through your own soul. A place where wounds have never been spoken. A place where you're still waiting for someone to embrace the most fragile part of you and say, it's okay, you're not wrong for feeling this. This is not a prediction. This is a return. A return not marked by glory or light, but by truth. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you will no longer fear loss. You will understand that what's coming is not an ending. It is resurrection. Right now, if you feel something stirring within you, even just a faint glimmer, write this in the comments. I am ready to rise from the place where I once fell. Not because that statement will instantly change the world, but because when you write it, you are opening a door for yourself. And the universe, yes, the universe always listens to those who dare to declare, I am ready. If what you're hearing carries any meaning for you, even just a little, leave a like. Share this video. And spread this message to someone else who is also silently waiting for a guiding light. Because perhaps, they are living in darkness, and you, Sagittarius, you are that light. Now then, let us begin. I've always believed that some people are not born to stand still. They cannot belong to any one mold. Never settle for mediocrity, they live through soul. Through faith that no matter how many doors the world closes, there is always another path waiting to be found. And in the map of stars, no one embodies that soul more vividly than Sagittarius. Ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of faith, of the grand dreams others are too afraid to imagine. Sagittarius is the wandering soul who is never lost. They walk. They venture, not to run away, but to discover their most authentic self through each experience. Each fall, and each rising. I once asked a Sagittarius friend, why are you always willing to leave everything behind just to start over? She smiled, eyes neither sad nor regretful. She said, there are places in the heart that we only find after losing everything. That line, more than any poetic philosophy, made me understand, sometimes, the true value of a person is not in what they manage to keep, but in the courage it takes to lose, in order to find themselves again. For Sagittarius, death, whether symbolic or spiritual, is not a period. It's an invitation to become someone deeper, brighter, more real. In the journey of life, we are rarely taught how to welcome change without resisting it. But Sagittarius teaches me that they don't cling. They don't beg for what's left to return. They close their eyes, take a deep breath, and move forward, because they know, beyond every loss, another version of themselves is waiting. If you are hearing this, perhaps you are standing at the crossroad of something profound. Maybe you've just lost a relationship, a loved one, a dream you once thought was forever. Or maybe, you just feel that something inside is shifting, and you can't explain it. Don't try to understand it all. Some things in life don't arrive to be explained. They come to be felt. and moved through. If that speaks to you, if something in this resonates as if it's speaking directly to your heart, write in the comments, I am learning to let go, so I can live true. Sometimes, those small written words become the thread that ties us to someone else quietly walking through the same sorrow. And you'll see, you are not alone. I once witnessed a man, a Sagittarius, standing by the coffin of his wife. He didn't sob. He didn't curse fate. He simply looked at her for a long time, then whispered one sentence. We'll meet again when time becomes eternity. And then he walked away. Not because he didn't hurt, but because he knew that this pain would not end him, it would open a new doorway, where his soul would be shaped again. There are things that only Sagittarius can do. Like loving without demanding anything in return. Like believing without needing proof. Like diving in without needing a guarantee of success. And because of that, no matter how many times they fall, they are always the ones to rise first. They are spiritual warriors, those who don't need armor, because their wounds are the evidence that they are truly alive. And that is today's first lesson. Strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from the ability to look straight into your pain, name it, and move forward, as if that very pain doesn't make you weaker, but more real. The world today is far too used to hiding. People are better at smiling than crying. Better at staying silent than sharing. But you, Sagittarius, are the reminder that being honest with your emotions has never been a mistake. So let me ask you, what are you still holding inside that you know it's time to release? What are you still gripping tightly, afraid that if you let it go, you'll have nothing left? Try letting it go, not because you're ready, but because you deserve a chance to be lighter, freer. And when you do that, when you bravely set down a piece of your past to open yourself to the future, you'll begin to feel what the next part will reveal. That's when miracles no longer come from outside, but from the inner strength awakening within you. There's something very special about Sagittarius that I've always admired, their ability to see beyond the visible. They don't just live by what they see or hear, but also by intuition. By subtle signs coming from a place others are too afraid to touch, the invisible realm. In astrology, Sagittarius is the one whose arrow points toward the sky, the soul that longs to go beyond material limits in search of a greater truth. And because of that, when the world begins to shift, when dreams become stranger, coincidences more frequent, and nameless restlessness lingers in the heart, Sagittarius doesn't panic. They observe quietly. They listen. Because they know, these are the signs that awakening is near. I remember once, a middle-aged woman, a Sagittarius, told me about a strange dream she'd been having for a month. In the dream, she always stood before a large wooden door, with a bright light shining behind it, but she never dared to open it. I'm afraid, she said, I'm afraid if I open that door, I won't be myself anymore. I didn't respond right away. But weeks later, she called me and said, I understand now. That door wasn't leading me somewhere else. It was opening so I could see myself again, but in the light of truth. That story has stayed with me ever since, because it so clearly reflects how the universe works. When it's time for you to change, everything around you will begin to speak. Not through words, but through feeling. And if you are a Sagittarius, you will sense it more clearly than anyone else. Maybe you're going through a strange season, where everything seems to be shifting. But nothing is clear. Where old relationships suddenly feel distant. Where things that once brought you joy now leave you feeling empty. Where you begin to ask yourself, am I on the right path? Am I truly living as myself? If so, I want you to know, you are not lost. You are being guided. And that vague feeling, that sense of instability, that is the pain of awakening. Here is the life lesson I've learned after years of walking alongside Sagittarius souls going through transformation. Every chaos holds within it a sacred meaning. Humanity has become too attached to control. We fear losing direction. We fear not knowing what's coming. But it's precisely in those moments of losing control that you are led back to your own heart. A place with no map, but always a compass from the divine. If you feel like your life is being turned upside down, write this in the comments. I give myself permission to change, even if I don't understand why. Because sometimes, just acknowledging that is enough to begin a new journey, one that you no longer need to control. You only need to walk with it. And Sagittarius, no one understands how to walk with like you do. You weren't born to live in a cage. You were born to be the pioneer who opens the door for others. I once spoke with a Sagittarius man, a retired American veteran. He told me that for many years after the war, he couldn't feel anything. No joy. No sadness. No feeling at all. But one day, he heard the voice of his granddaughter. She laughed. And in that moment, he broke down in tears. Not because he was sad, but because he realized his heart was still alive. Despite all the horrors he had seen. Despite once believing he could never believe in life again. Just that small sound was enough to awaken the part of him he had buried. And he said to me, I thought I had died. But it turns out, I was just sleeping very deeply. That's what I want to tell you today, Sagittarius. You are not lost. You are not falling apart. You are awakening from a very long sleep. And those strange dreams, those vague emotions, those wild desires to drop everything and start over. They are not recklessness. They are the calling of your soul. We're living in an era where everyone is busy trying to express themselves, but very few truly take time to listen to themselves. And you, Sagittarius, possess something the world needs more than ever. The ability to believe in what hasn't yet appeared. The patience to walk a path without knowing where it leads. The acceptance that not everything needs to be solved right away. You are living proof that sometimes, slowing down, listening more, and feeling deeper, is the way to healing an entire generation. And that is the human value you bring to this world, whether you realize it or not. In a world screaming for attention, you are the one who dares to sit quietly and listen. In a society obsessed with productivity, you are the one who dares to take the long way around to preserve the softness in your heart. And in an age where people easily walk away from each other, you are the one who turns back. Not to cling, but to complete what was left unfinished. With compassion. So let me ask you, and if you feel ready, answer from the heart. Lately, have you felt like something is waiting for you just ahead? Have you ever sensed that a door is opening, even if you don't yet know where it leads? If you have, write this down. I believe in what I cannot yet see. Because the moment you say it aloud, your soul will begin to vibrate like a string tuned to its true frequency. And the world will respond. In astrology, the moment Sagittarius enters a higher phase of evolution is often accompanied by events that require letting go. It could be a loss. It could be a redirection. But trust me, what you're letting go of will never be greater than what you're about to receive. You were not born to live small. You carry the energy of expansion, and that expansion begins from within, not from external success. Remember this. Sometimes, it's when you feel you have nothing left to hold on to, that you are the freest to fly. And you, Sagittarius, were born with wings not to be folded, but to be spread wide in the storm. You are not like anyone else. And you don't need to be. Because in the next part, I'll tell you about the moment when the things you once prayed for in silence finally begin to answer. Not with dazzling miracles, but through quiet, sacred movements in everyday life. That's when you'll realize, the universe is not silent. It's just been waiting for you to listen. There's something I believe in deeply, not because I read it somewhere, but because I've lived long enough to witness it again and again. The universe never forgets the whispers you've spoken in loneliness. You may think that the wishes you once made, the little dreams you held in your heart when you were young, they've all been swept away by life. But no. Nothing that truly comes from the heart is ever forgotten. Every wish whispered through tears, every prayer uttered in the quiet of the night, every longing that felt endless, is recorded. And it is kept in a place higher than what our eyes can see. I once met an elderly woman, a true Sagittarius. She had lived a peaceful life, then lost her husband, her children, and ended up living alone in a small wooden cabin by the forest. To outsiders, she seemed like a lonely, resigned woman, perhaps even a little strange. But no one knew that each morning, she would stand on her porch, close her eyes, and whisper blessings to the world. She had no one to talk to. But she had faith. She believed that the light she sent out, no matter how small, could still reach someone who needed it. Years later, I met a man who told me he had once been a child ready to end his life. Until one day, as he wandered aimlessly, he met a stranger, a woman who hugged him for a long time and said, "You still have so much to live to see." That woman was her. Someone the world had forgotten, who saved a life, simply by showing up. And today, that man is a therapist, healing young people who have lost their way. I share this story, not to move you to tears, but to remind you of something. Every good thing you've ever given, even if no one saw it, has been witnessed by the universe. And someday, right when you feel like hope is fading, that miracle will appear. Not with grandeur. Not with noise. But with a softly opened door. A person who walks in. A glance that warms your heart. If you're a Sagittarius, you've spent your life quietly believing that things will get better. You don't need to prove it. You don't need anyone to believe with you. You just carry your flame through windless nights. But hear me. That flame you've guarded all these years is beginning to be answered. The things you once silently longed for, they are on their way back to you. You may not see them yet, but the energy has shifted. You may not have touched them yet, but you're starting to feel it. And that is why you're here, in this moment. If you feel this message is meant for you, write in the comments below. I welcome all the good things that are on their way to me. Not for others to read, but for you to affirm to yourself. I've grown enough to believe in goodness, even when I can't yet see it. I, too, was once someone who lived by faith, even when life made me want to give up. There were mornings I woke up and felt like nothing more than a shadow drifting through an old room. But then, one day, as I passed by a small cemetery, I saw a line carved into a gravestone. I survived what I once thought would kill me. I stood there in silence for a long time. And when I finally turned and walked away, I knew I was no longer the same person. Sometimes, chance words like that are messages carefully placed for you. To remind you, you were never walking alone. And that's the lesson of this part. What you once prayed for is coming, not to excite you, but to remind you of who you truly are. Sometimes, the miracle isn't winning the lottery, or meeting someone perfect. Sometimes, it's simply feeling peace in an ordinary day. It's being grateful that you're still breathing. It's falling back in love with yourself, for no reason at all. If you've lived through days that felt like there was no path forward, and today, you're still here, still listening to these words, then you've already experienced a miracle. And maybe you've never been praised enough. So let me say this. You are admirable. Not because you endured it all, but because you never gave up. Even with a broken heart, you still found a reason to keep going. I want you to consider this for a moment. If you knew for sure that something beautiful was coming, would you act differently? Would you love differently? Would you live differently? Would you still be afraid? I want you to answer that for yourself, and if you'd like, share in the comments. If I knew a miracle was coming, I would. and finish the sentence. That one answer could become a light for someone still walking through the dark. Astrology calls this moment a window of destiny, a time when spiritual energy expands. When people with special soul maps like Sagittarius begin to receive clear guidance. Don't ignore the small signs. A song that plays again and again. A name that keeps repeating in your mind. A feeling you can't explain, but you know it's real. They're all signs. Be still and observe. The universe is speaking to you. And you know something, modern society has taught us how to be rational, how to be realistic, how to be efficient. But no one taught us how to live with our soul. Sagittarius, you are the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual realm. You didn't come here just to work, earn money, and die. You came to reignite the kind of faith the world has forgotten. Faith in humanity. Faith in light. Faith that all good things begin from a heart that dares to hope, no matter how fragile that hope may be. And in the next part, I'll take you to what I believe is the most sacred stage of Sagittarius' journey. When you stop waiting for the world to give you something, and start creating goodness from within. That is the moment you become the light, instead of just searching for it. And I know, you're ready. There comes a point in life when we stop living for what might come from outside. No longer waiting for someone to change. No longer hoping for a miracle to knock on our door. No longer depending on something out there to make us feel whole. Instead, we begin to return. Return to ourselves. Not because we've achieved something big, but because we've gone far enough to know. True peace isn't found out there. It's in how we see ourselves each morning when we wake. And if you're a Sagittarius, or if Sagittarius is rising in your chart, then you're stepping into that phase. The phase where the question is no longer, when will something good happen? But rather, what can I do right now to create something good? And that is a sacred turning point. A turning point where you stop waiting for the world to change, and begin becoming the light you've always sought. I used to think that light comes after darkness. That you must suffer to earn healing. But gradually, I realized, healing isn't a reward for those who survive suffering. It's a choice made by the brave. By those who place their hand on their own wound and say, I won't keep spreading pain. You don't need someone to apologize. You don't need anyone to witness your pain. You don't need the world to agree. You just need you. And your decision. I remember a middle-aged man who once came to see me at a talk. He had lost his job, lost his home, and his wife had left him, all within a year. And when he spoke, he didn't cry. He smiled, but that smile couldn't hide the emptiness behind it. I have nothing left, he said. I only have myself now. And I don't know whether that's something to be sad about, or something to celebrate. I looked into his eyes and replied, maybe that's actually the strongest beginning you'll ever have. Because now that there's nothing holding you back, this time, you can rebuild everything in the truest way possible. That story stayed with me for a long time. Because, you know, we're often afraid of losing. But some losses are not endings. They are release. They are a chance to choose again. They are blessings in disguise. And for Sagittarius, the strange thing is, they tend to recognize that faster than anyone else. They don't cling for too long. They don't dwell on blame. They may hurt deeply, but then they get up, shake it off, and keep going. Not because they are cold, but because they understand, life waits for no one. And if you're still breathing, then you still have a reason to live brighter than yesterday. The greatest lesson I've learned from Sagittarius is this. When you no longer rely on something external to feel valuable, no one can take your light away. That is true freedom. Freedom from needing validation. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from the invisible expectations that have suffocated your soul for years. And if you're listening to this today, I believe you are standing at that very threshold. Maybe you can't name it yet. Maybe you're still afraid. But if you're ready, write in the comments below. I choose to be the light, instead of waiting for it. Because the moment you dare to admit that is the moment you shift from living reactively to living intentionally. And from there, everything in your life begins to change. You know, I used to think healing was a personal journey. But in the end, I realized, no one truly heals alone. We heal through each other. Through a simple question. Through an understanding look. Through honest stories shared without judgment. And you, Sagittarius, you have that special gift, the ability to light up a room just by being authentically present. You don't need to do anything extraordinary. Just being yourself is already enough to open others up to the light. In today's world, where people grow more distant because of speed, achievement, and fear of vulnerability, your sincerity, your kindness, your blunt honesty are priceless. And the beautiful thing is, you never lose that, no matter how scarred life has made you. If I could leave you with one thing from this part, it would be this. You don't have to wait for the world to be better in order to live better. You are the starting point. Right here. Right now. You might think you're not skilled enough, not good enough, not strong enough. But I want you to know, it's precisely you. With all your wounds and imperfections, that light can enter most easily. And that light, once lit from within, will begin to radiate outward. Not because you force it. Not because you try to shine. But simply because you live honestly. Every day. And that, more than anything, becomes the miracle, not just for your life, but for those around you. Ask yourself truthfully. If today were the last day I get to live, how would I live it well? Don't wait for the right moment to start loving. Don't wait for someone else to validate you to see your worth. Don't wait for everything to be perfect to be grateful. Live now, because the miracle doesn't lie in where you're going, but in how you show up in every step of the journey. And in the next part, I'll take you deeper into your own inner journey, where new life is not just awakened by hope, but sustained by commitment. Commitment to yourself. Commitment not to give up. Commitment to live in alignment with your light, even when no one else sees it. Because you know something, God is still watching. And He has never taken His eyes off you. I used to think awakening was a moment when you realized something profound. A sudden enlightenment. A moment of seeing clearly. But the more I lived, the more I observed, the more I spoke with people who've walked through great trials, the more I realized, awakening isn't a moment. It's a commitment. A silent promise to yourself that I will not give up on my light, even when darkness comes. And for Sagittarius, light is never a stranger. It doesn't lie outside of you. It lives within. It is the quiet flame you've carried since the day you started asking big questions. Why am I here? What does all of this mean? Is life just a series of silent days blending into each other? If you've ever asked that, then you've already stepped into the land of awakening. I once met a man in his 50s, he had been the CEO of a large company. He had everything, money, fame, respect. But one day, he resigned. He gave it all up, bought an old car, and started driving across America, just to watch the sunrise in different places. I'm not lost, he said, I just don't want to die without ever having truly lived. And then he told me that the first time he felt peace was on an autumn morning. When he pulled over by the roadside and saw a small deer standing still in the forest. In that moment, there was no noise, no burden, no pressure, only him, his breath, and the presence of life. That story struck me in a strange way. Because I realized, Many of us are living on autopilot. Living by expectations. Living by roles assigned to us by life. But Sagittarius is different. You are the souls that cannot stay too long in a suit that's too tight. You were born to expand. To go far. To peel off every false layer society has placed over your true self. And your greatest commitment, it's not to the world. It's to yourself. I will live truthfully, even if I have to walk alone. The greatest lesson I've learned from awakened Sagittarius souls is this. True light doesn't come from shining in front of others. It comes from how you treat yourself on the days no one is watching. Are you kind to yourself? Do you forgive yourself? Do you have the courage not to reject the darker parts of you? Those questions are not easy to answer. But when you dare to face them, you stop living reactively and start living consciously. And I believe, if you're hearing this, you are in that exact stage. The stage where you no longer need others to tell you who you are. No longer need the world's approval to feel whole. You begin choosing the path that's not easy, but true. The path only you understand why you must keep walking. And if you feel you're in that place, I invite you to write one thing in the comments, not long. Just true. I commit to living in alignment with my inner light, whether others understand or not. Write it from the heart. Write it as if you are signing a sacred vow with your soul. You know, I used to be afraid of being wrong. Afraid of disappointing others. Afraid that if I stopped, I would be left behind. But then one day, I was exhausted. I sat down. I breathed. I looked out the window and saw a single ray of sunlight on the floor. Just one small ray. But I saw myself in it. And I understood, light doesn't demand anything from me. It only asks that I stop turning away from it. I don't know where you are in your journey. Maybe you're walking through a dark forest. Maybe you're standing at a crossroads. Maybe you've just lost something so big that you don't know where to begin again. But I want you to know this. The light is still there. And it's not outside of you. It's within. All it takes is for you to stop, place your hand on your heart, and whisper, I'm still here. And just like that, you've returned. For Sagittarius, the journey always matters more than the destination. But there's something you often forget. That sometimes, the journey isn't found in far-off places, but in the small daily choices. Do you speak the truth even when afraid of being misunderstood? Do you dare to love, even when unsure if the other will stay? Do you stand for what's right, even if no one cheers for you? That's where light is forged. I believe the world needs more people like you. People who dare to live by their inner calling, instead of the outer noise. People who choose silence instead of argument. Who choose to walk away rather than stay in what no longer fits. Who let go, not out of exhaustion, but because they no longer want to live falsely. And you, Sagittarius, you are the symbol of that transformation. And if you feel weak, or full of self-doubt, or unstable, remember, that's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're beginning to shed an old shell. Breaking always comes before opening. And chaos always comes before alignment. Don't be afraid. You're doing just fine. In the next part, I will take you to the deepest point in this journey. Where the losses you once thought would destroy you begin to turn into gifts. Not by denying the pain, but by looking at it with gratitude, because it's the pain that shaped the person you've become. There is a moment in the healing journey when we no longer ask, why did that happen to me? We don't need an explanation. We don't need someone to blame. We just sit down, take a deep breath, and whisper, thank you. Not because it felt good, but because finally, we understand. Every loss brought us back to ourselves. If you've ever lost someone you loved more than yourself. If you've ever walked away from a place, a person, or a dream because you no longer had the strength to hold on. If you've ever fallen into a darkness so thick you couldn't see a way out. Then let me tell you this. You didn't break. You made it through. And that deserves to be honored. I once carried a pain that I couldn't speak about for many years. No one truly knew what I had gone through. Because I was good at hiding, good at smiling, good at pretending I was okay. But one night, sitting alone by the window, under a moonless sky, I suddenly broke down, unable to hold back the tears. Not because I was remembering anything in particular, but because, for the first time, I realized I didn't need to be strong anymore. I let the pain move through me. Without blocking it. Without rushing it. And strangely, in that moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because you know what? Pain doesn't need to be erased. It only needs to be acknowledged. And you, Sagittarius, are a soul of light. But you are also someone who has held deep pain. No one may know. But you know. No one may see. But you feel it. And I want you to understand. You don't need to let go of parts of yourself to be okay. Those cracks, those breaks. That's where the light has already entered. Do not deny what once caused you pain. Look back at it as if you were looking at a child who was once abandoned. Sit down, place your hand over your heart, and say, I don't need you to disappear. I only need you to be heard. Because true miracles only begin when we stop trying to get over it and start walking with ourselves. If this touches you, leave an affirmation in the comments, not for me, but for yourself. I am ready to face my pain and move forward with a whole heart. When you write that, you are marking the beginning of your spiritual maturity, where you no longer run, but begin to face it with love. I used to think that in order to heal, I had to understand why I was hurt. But then I realized, some wounds have no reason. Some things don't happen to teach you a lesson, but simply to show you that even if you don't understand, you can still love again. Still live again. Still open your heart again. And that is the greatest thing a once broken heart can do. To remain open, even after it has closed. To soften, even after it has hardened. To believe in love, even after love has walked away. My dear one, if you are in this phase, I want you to know you are on the right path. You don't have to be fast. You don't have to be perfect. You only need to be honest. You only need to choose to return to yourself each morning, and that is enough. Because, you see, the return to oneself is always the greatest miracle. And that is also why I believe Sagittarius was not born to live only for themselves. You came here to be a guiding light. No dogma. No title. Just you, real, deep, and full of compassion. Your beauty does not lie in the ideals you pursue. It lies in the way you continue to love, even when you are hurting. Your strength is not in always being optimistic. It is in the way you keep walking, even when your faith has been shaken. I end this part with a question only you can answer. Do you allow yourself to be happy, even when nothing is certain? If the answer is yes, then you are in the final stage of healing. Where there is nothing left to fix, only love left to live. And I invite you, gently, to whisper with me. I no longer wait for the miracle. I am the miracle. I no longer wait for the miracle. I am the miracle. Because I have walked through every trial with a heart that did not give up. You may write that down if you wish, for yourself, for your soul, for the journey you've so bravely endured. Because when you acknowledge that, you don't just close an old circle. You open a new chapter, one where you no longer live to overcome, but to radiate. When the storm has quieted, when the tears have dried, a very special stillness begins. And then, after healing, your journey does not end. After healing, your journey does not end. It begins again, but this time, with a heart that knows how to love without clinging, to give without expecting. When pain no longer makes you retreat, but helps you open, that is when you begin to become the light, instead of just searching for it. For Sagittarius, light never comes from outside. It is the flame you were born with. At times blazing, at times flickering, but never extinguished. After everything, you no longer live to prove anything, but simply to be quiet, kind, resilient. I once met a Sagittarius who had gone through heartbreak, bankruptcy, loneliness. But now he simply writes handwritten letters to elderly people who live alone, ending each one with, "The light in me greets the light in you." He didn't need to stand out. He only needed to show up. And sometimes, that presence alone is enough to help someone believe in life again. The lesson I learned is this. After healing, you don't need to do anything grand to shine. You only need to live authentically each day. And that authentic life, that is the gift you offer to this world. If you feel you are stepping into a new chapter, write this down. I am ready to give what I once lacked. Because when you do that, you're not just healing yourself, you're becoming a firekeeper for those still lost on their path. And the next part, my dear one, will be a beautiful chapter. When Sagittarius is no longer just a survivor of the darkness, but a teacher. Living awake, loving with light, and guiding through presence. Do you know? There are people who never need a stage, a microphone, or eloquent words, and still teach us unforgettable lessons. They don't say, "Follow me." They just live honestly, gently, quietly, but fully present. And you, Sagittarius, after healing, you are one of them. Not everyone who has suffered learns how to love again. But you did. Not everyone who has lost learns how to open again. But you did. And because of that, your presence, even in silence, has the power to soothe. You are the teacher of presence. I once met someone like you. He didn't talk about what he had overcome. He just sat and listened to others share. And somehow, they were healed. Not because he had the answers, but because he didn't try to fix them. He gave them the space to return to themselves. That's when I learned this truth. The greatest teacher is not the one who explains the most, but the one who makes us want to return to the light within ourselves. You don't need to do anything special to be loved, to be seen, or to be yourself. You only need to keep being who you are, honest, faithful, and never abandoning yourself again. If this resonates with you, leave a whisper in the comments. I'm not trying to teach anyone. I'm just living honestly, and letting the light within me speak for itself. I'm not trying to teach anyone. I'm just living honestly, and letting the light within me speak for itself. And reach those who are quietly finding their way back to themselves. And in the final part coming up, my dear, I will bring you to a soft ending. When Sagittarius realizes that happiness doesn't come from something new, but from fully walking alongside oneself. And then, when all the searching quiets, when the questions no longer keep you up at night, when you no longer wonder who will stay, that is when you realize happiness is not in where you arrive, but in how you travel with yourself. After everything, Sagittarius doesn't need to reach a promised land to feel whole. Because the promised land is the place where your heart no longer battles itself. It is where you no longer have to choose between peace and truth. It is where you no longer try to become anyone at all, but simply are yourself. And know that it is enough. I used to think happiness was an achievement. A goal. A destination. But then I saw it appear in the smallest things. A slow morning. A glance that sees you. A kind word to yourself. And I knew, happiness is when you no longer fight your own soul. It is when you stand still, in the midst of change, and say, I'm here. I'm not abandoning myself anymore. Dear one, if this journey has touched the deepest part of you, leave a small promise in the comments, for your own heart. I choose to live with presence. No rushing. No pretending. No turning away from myself again. Because that promise doesn't just open a new chapter. It is the doorway to come alive again. Not as someone once broken, but as someone who has chosen to love again. Consciously. And if you've made it this far, it means you are brave enough. Real enough. Loving enough. To begin a new life. Not flashy. But unshakable. Thank you, Sagittarius. Thank you, listener. For not giving up. For staying. For choosing the light.